The massive crystal walls of the Galactic Council chamber shook violently as emergency alarms blared through the ancient halls. Ambassador Keleth gripped his floating chair with all four of his thin arms, watching in horror as another bright star on the holographic map turned blood red and then vanished completely. The Void Swarm had claimed yet another world. "That's the Zarian system," whispered Counselor Mira, her voice barely audible through her translator device. 3 billion souls ... gone in less than 6 hours. Chancellor Vorth's breathing apparatus hissed loudly as he struggled to maintain composure. His species had evolved on a peaceful water world where the biggest threat was mild ocean currents. The concept of total planetary destruction was beyond their worst nightmares. "How many does that make?" he asked, though he already knew the terrible answer. 12 complete star systems, Keleth replied, his voice hollow. The Void Swarm isn't just conquering these worlds. They're completely consuming them. Every living thing, every piece of technology. Even the planets themselves are being broken down and absorbed into their biomechanical collective. The assembled representatives from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence. These were beings from hundreds of different worlds, each representing millions or billions of their kind. They had formed this council thousands of years ago to maintain peace and share knowledge. Never in their collective history had they faced anything like the Void Swarm. "Our combined fleets managed to slow them down at the Tertian Belt," reported Admiral Zephyr, his usually proud military bearing now slumped with defeat. "But we lost 70% of our ships in the process. The survivors are scattered across 3 sectors, too damaged and demoralized to mount another defense. The creatures that made up the Void Swarm defied everything the galaxy's greatest scientists thought they understood about life. They appeared to be part machine, part living tissue, and part something else entirely. They could adapt to any weapon used against them within hours. They showed no interest in communication, negotiation, or mercy. They simply arrived, consumed everything, and moved on to the next target. The projection models show they'll reach the core worlds within 2 standard rotations," Keleth announced, his voice cracking. "After that, it's only a matter of time before they consume the entire galaxy." That's when the unexpected happened. A crackling transmission broke through their secure communications network. The signal was crude, primitive even, coming from a system so far on the galactic rim that most council members had never heard of it. The face that appeared on their screens was unlike anything they'd seen before. The being called itself Captain Jake Mitchell, and it was clearly from a species none of them had encountered. His skin was darker than most spacefaring races, marked with what appeared to be old battle scars. His eyes held a strange mixture of warmth and something else that made several council members unconsciously lean back in their seats. "Greetings," the human said in perfectly clear galactic standard, though his accent was unfamiliar. "We picked up your distress signals about 3 days ago. Took us a while to figure out your communication protocols, but we got there eventually." The council members looked at each other in confusion. Their distress calls had been broadcast on emergency frequencies that only advanced civilizations should be able to decode. "I'm Captain Jake Mitchell, of the Earth Defense Force," the human continued. "We've been monitoring the situation with these Void Swarm creatures, and frankly, we don't like what we're seeing. Nobody deserves to go out like that." Chancellor Vorth activated his communication array with shaking hands. "Captain Mitchell, we appreciate your concern, but I'm afraid you don't understand the scope of what we're facing. These entities have destroyed our most advanced warships like they were children's toys." Jake's scarred face remained calm, almost peaceful. "Yeah, we figured they were pretty tough. But here's the thing. We've dealt with tough before. We'd like to help if you'll have us help." Ambassador Keleth couldn't hide his disbelief. According to their records, this Sol-3 system contained a single inhabited planet classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. Such worlds were considered barely capable of supporting basic life, let alone advanced civilization. "We're already loading our ships," Jake replied. "Should reach your coordinates in about 6 standard hours. Just wanted to give you a heads up so you don't shoot at us when we arrive." The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. Finally, Counselor Mira spoke up. "Class 12 Deathworld inhabitants, offering to help us fight the Void Swarm. Have we really fallen this far?" But Chancellor Vorth was studying the data from the human transmission. "Look at these readings," he said slowly. "Their ships are moving faster than our emergency broadcasts traveled, and the energy signatures. I've never seen anything like them." With their worlds burning and their fleets scattered, the Galactic Council faced an impossible choice. Accept help from unknown aliens, from a world that shouldn't be able to support intelligent life, or face extinction alone. They chose to hope. The space around Galactic Station Prime suddenly rippled as massive shapes tore through hyperspace. Ambassador Kelleth watched from the observation deck as 12 human vessels materialized in formation, their hulls still glowing from the dimensional jump. The ships looked nothing like the graceful, curved designs favored by advanced galactic civilizations. These human vessels were angular, brutal-looking things covered in what appeared to be armor plating and weapon mounts. They reminded Kelleth of the ancient war machines from his species' violent past, back when they still fought wars before evolving beyond such primitive behavior. Yet something about these crude-looking ships made him shiver with an emotion he couldn't quite name. "They're requesting docking permission," reported the station's communication officer, her voice uncertain. "Their lead ship is transmitting. Credentials for Admiral Lisa Parker." Within the hour, the docking bay filled with the sound of heavy footsteps. The first human to emerge from the airlock was shorter than Kelleth had expected, standing barely taller than a young Praxian. But Admiral Lisa Parker carried herself with a confidence that made seasoned warriors step aside. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and her uniform bore scars and patches that spoke of real combat experience. "Thank you for the invitation," Lisa said as she stepped onto the station floor. Her voice was calm, professional, but there was an undertone of barely contained energy that put everyone on edge. "Nice gravity you've got here. Feels just like home." Several council members exchanged worried glances. The station's artificial gravity was set to 1.2 standard units, which was considered heavy by most species standards. Many visiting dignitaries required assistance suits just to move around comfortably. Yet this human was walking around as if she weighed nothing at all. "How is this possible?" whispered Dr. Norvex, the council's chief physician. "According to our scans, her bone density is 3 times greater than any known spacefaring species. Her muscle fiber composition suggests she could lift objects weighing several hundred kilograms." The human delegation that followed Admiral Parker was equally unsettling. Each member looked like they had been forged from some impossibly durable material. Their movements were fluid but precise, like predators who had learned to walk upright. Even their casual conversations contained references that made the alien observers deeply uncomfortable. "The atmospheric readings from that last void swarm attack remind me of that volcano hike we did in Hawaii," mentioned Dr. Tyler Brooks, the expedition's lead scientist, as he reviewed the tactical data. "Remember how the sulfur dioxide levels were off the charts? This is similar, just with more exotic compounds mixed in." Ambassador Kelleth felt his breathing apparatus struggle as he processed what he'd just heard. This human was casually discussing atmospheric conditions that would melt most known life forms, comparing them to what he assumed was some kind of recreational activity. "The biosignatures from the Void Swarm creatures are fascinating," Dr. Brooks continued, seemingly oblivious to the horrified stares he was receiving. "They remind me of those parasitic organisms we studied in the Amazon rainforest. You know, the ones that burrow through your skull and take over your nervous system? Except these are the size of starships, and apparently eat planets instead of brains." Chancellor Vorth's breathing apparatus began making alarming wheezing sounds. Did he just compare galaxy-ending monsters to something from his home planet? Medical Officer Rachel Stone, noticing the distress among the alien delegation, helpfully offered assistance. Anyone need a pick-me-up? I've got some standard human combat stimulants that might help with the stress. She produced a small medical kit and began listing off the contents. We've got adrenaline boosters, pain suppressors, endurance and some mild psychotropic stabilizers for battlefield trauma. The alien medical staff who analyzed the offered substances immediately called for emergency containment protocols. According to their equipment, what the humans considered mild stimulants would be lethal toxins to most known species. The pain suppressors alone contained enough active compounds to kill a large Thorian battle beast. These readings can't be correct, muttered Chief Medical Officer Xanth, his tentacles writhing in distress. The chemical composition of their standard field rations shows levels of capsaicin, caffeine, and ethanol that would cause immediate organ failure in 90% of galactic species. What truly unsettled the Council wasn't just the humans' physical capabilities, but their casual attitude toward danger. They discussed surviving in toxic environments, extreme temperatures, and hostile wildlife as if these were normal childhood experiences. When Admiral Parker mentioned learning to swim in an ocean filled with creatures that could bite through steel hulls, several council members required emergency medical attention. I don't understand, Ambassador Kelleth finally managed to say. Your planet. How do you survive there? How does anything survive there? Admiral Parker looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Earth. It's not that bad once you get used to it. Sure, it tries to kill you on a regular basis, but that just keeps things interesting. Besides, all that surviving makes you tougher. She smiled, and for the first time, the assembled aliens began to understand that perhaps they had found exactly the kind of help they needed. These humans weren't just offering to fight the Void Swarm. They were a species that had been preparing for this kind of battle their entire evolutionary history. The galaxy's last hope came from a world that had spent millions of years creating the perfect warriors. The battle alarm echoed through the combined fleet as the Void Swarm emerged from the dark nebula like a nightmare made real. Thousands of biomechanical horrors stretched across space, their twisted forms pulsing with sickly green energy. The alien ships immediately began their defensive formations, elegant curves of metal and crystal preparing for what they knew would be their final stand. Ambassador Kelleth watched from the command bridge of the Praxian flagship, his 4 hands gripping the observation rail. The human ships had positioned themselves at the front of the formation, their brutal angular designs looking small and primitive next to the massive alien dreadnoughts. All ships, prepare for engagement. Admiral Parker's voice came through the communications array. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves today. We're fighting for every world that's already fallen, and every world that hasn't fallen yet. The Void Swarm struck first, as they always did, but this time, their opening move wasn't a physical attack. A wave of pure psychic terror washed over the combined fleet, carrying with it the screams of every world the swarm had consumed. The mental assault was designed to paralyze enemy forces with overwhelming horror and despair. The effect on the alien crews was immediate and devastating. On ship after ship, crews collapsed at their stations as their minds were flooded with visions of planetary destruction and cosmic horror. The Thorian battlecruiser Starbreaker began drifting helplessly as its entire crew fell into catatonic shock. The elegant Safarian destroyers stopped mid-maneuver, their pilots overwhelmed by nightmares of worlds burning. All alien vessels report crew incapacitation, came the panicked voice of Fleet Coordinator Vex. The psychic assault is too strong. We're defenseless. That's when something impossible happened. Instead of falling back or succumbing to the psychic attack, the human ships accelerated. They drove straight into the Void Swarm formation, their engines blazing brighter as they picked up speed. Yahoo! Came the voice of Sergeant Tom Bradley over the open comm channel. Boys, you remember that camping trip we took through Yellowstone? When we had to hike 15 miles through that sulfur pit while dodging those geysers? This is easier than that. The sound of human laughter filled the communication channels as marine boarding pods launched from the human vessels. Ambassador Kelleth watched in stunned disbelief as these tiny pods flew directly into the biomechanical monstrosities that had terrorized the galaxy. Tommy, you're insane, came another voice, this one belonging to Corporal Billy Knox. But I love it. Let's show these space bugs what Earth Marines can do. The boarding pods punched through the void swarm's hull plating and disappeared inside. Within minutes, internal explosions began lighting up the enemy vessels from within. The humans were actually fighting hand-to-hand combat inside ships filled with toxic atmosphere and gravity fields that should have crushed them instantly. High above the main battle, fighter pilot Amy Rodriguez was putting on a show that defied all logic. Her small fighter craft dove straight through a cloud of corrosive gas that was dissolving alien ships on contact. The toxic mist that could eat through reinforced hull plating didn't seem to bother her ship at all. Woohoo! Amy's voice rang out with genuine joy. This reminds me of flying through Hurricane Patricia back in 15. Remember that storm, guys? Now that was a wild ride. She pulled her fighter through impossible maneuvers, using the corrosive cloud as cover while she picked off swarm vessels with precision strikes. Every few seconds, her laughter would echo over the comm as she pulled off another death-defying stunt. The real turning point came when Colonel David Hayes led his elite team in a direct assault on the swarm's command vessel. The massive bioship was the size of a small moon, protected by energy fields that could vaporize approaching ships. Hayes and his team didn't approach by ship, they used personal jetpacks. Control, this is Hayes. The colonel's voice was calm, despite the fact that he was flying through space wearing nothing but a reinforced suit. We're going in through the main reactor port. Should be fun. The alien command staff watched their screens in horror as 20 humans in powered armor flew directly into the heart of the enemy flagship. The internal environment readings showed temperatures that would melt most metals, radiation levels that would kill most life forms instantly, and gravitational fields that constantly shifted between crushing and weightless. For 30 minutes, there was only silence from Hayes and his team. Then, suddenly, the massive swarm command ship began to convulse. Internal explosions rippled through its biomechanical structure as its central consciousness was systematically destroyed from within. Hayes to fleet, came the colonel's voice, now clearly strained and breathing heavily. Package delivered. Command ship is going down. Might want to back up a bit. When the rescue shuttles finally reached the remains of the command vessel, they found Colonel Hayes and 12 of his team members alive in what had once been the ship's central brain. Hayes was covered in wounds that would have killed most beings. His armor was half melted, and he was still grinning like he'd just won the galaxy's best prize. Not bad for a Tuesday, he said, as the medics loaded him onto a stretcher. Though, I gotta say, their interior decorating could use some work. Way too many tentacles, and not nearly enough windows. The Void Swarm, for the first time in their existence, began to retreat. They had encountered something they couldn't understand or adapt to, a species that became more dangerous when faced with impossible odds, and actually seemed to enjoy the challenge. The tide had turned, and the humans were just getting started. Word spread quickly through the galactic communication networks about these impossible humans. In battle after battle across dozens of star systems, they were doing things that violated everything the galaxy's greatest scientists thought they understood about biology, physics, and basic survival on the industrial world of Kepler-7. Engineer Bobby Thompson became the stuff of legend when the main reactor complex took a direct hit from Void Swarm energy weapons. The radiation levels inside the damaged facility registered so high that even robotic repair drones shut down to prevent permanent damage to their circuits. "I need someone to manually restart the cooling systems," announced Chief Engineer Vex over the emergency channel. But the radiation exposure would kill any known life form in under 60 seconds. Bobby stepped forward, adjusting his basic radiation suit. "No problem, Chief. Point me in the right direction." The alien engineering team watched in horror as their monitoring equipment showed Bobby walking calmly through areas where the radiation was literally cooking the air around him. Their sensors indicated exposure levels that should have reduced him to basic atoms within minutes. 23 minutes later, Bobby emerged from the reactor core, his suit smoking and his hair slightly singed. "All fixed," he announced cheerfully. "Though I gotta say, it's pretty warm in there. Reminds me of working construction in Phoenix during the summer." The alien medical team immediately ran full-body scans, expecting to find massive cellular damage. Instead, they found Bobby's cells were actually repairing themselves faster than the radiation could damage them. When asked how this was possible, Bobby just shrugged. "Back home, we call this a light sunburn," he said, peeling off his radiation suit. "You should see what happens when I forget sunscreen at the beach." Meanwhile, on the front lines, Corporal Jenny Martinez was rewriting the book on extended combat operations. For 72 straight hours, she held a critical supply route against wave after wave of void swarm attacks. She never slept, never retreated, and somehow maintained perfect accuracy with her weapons, despite conditions that would break most warriors after a few hours. What truly amazed the alien observers was what she was eating to maintain her energy. The human military rations she consumed registered as Class 3 biological toxins on standard galactic scanners. The preservatives alone contained chemicals that most species used as industrial solvents. "How are you able to digest those substances?" asked Dr. Norvex, the expedition's xenobiologist. After analyzing Jenny's meal packets, Jenny looked down at the package she was eating and laughed. "This stuff, it's not that bad once you get used to it. My mom's cooking was way worse than this. She used to make this thing called tuna casserole that I swear was trying to evolve into a new life form." The Void Swarm, meanwhile, was experiencing something they had never encountered in their millions of years of galactic conquest. They were a species that survived through rapid adaptation. When faced with a new threat, they would quickly evolve countermeasures and immunities. It had worked against every other species they had faced. But humans were different. Every time the swarm developed a defense against human tactics, the humans would do something completely unpredictable that shouldn't have been possible. When the swarm created armor that could withstand standard military explosives, demolitions, expert Frank Wilson showed up with devices built from what appeared to be children's toys and household chemicals. These improvised weapons somehow created explosive yields that defied every known law of chemistry. "Where did you learn to make explosives like this?" asked Admiral Zephyr, studying the remains of a swarm fortress that Frank had demolished with what looked like a science fair project. "My nephew's chemistry set," Frank replied, matter-of-factly. "Kid's only 12, but he's got some interesting ideas about molecular bonds. We've been working on this stuff in my garage for months." The alien military scientists ran every test they could think of on Frank's improvised explosives. According to their analysis, the devices shouldn't work at all. The chemical combinations were unstable, the delivery systems were crude, and the whole design violated basic principles of explosive engineering. Yet somehow, they were more effective than the galaxy's most advanced military weapons. The crowning achievement of human impossibility came when Captain Susan Davis received a distress call from a transport ship carrying alien civilians. The ship had been damaged by swarm fighters and was falling into the crushing atmosphere of a gas giant. The gravitational forces and atmospheric pressure would destroy any rescue vessel long before it could reach the survivors. "This is impossible," announced Fleet Commander Kelleth, over the communication array. No ship can survive those conditions. The atmospheric pressure alone would crush our strongest vessels. Captain Davis looked at the sensor readings, showing the gas giant's crushing gravity and toxic atmosphere. Yeah, it looks pretty rough, she agreed. But I've flown through worse. Remember that time we had to evacuate that research station during the Jupiter storm season? This is just like that, except the wind's blowing the other way. What followed was a display of piloting skill that redefined what the galaxy thought was possible. Davis took her damaged destroyer, a ship that was already held together with emergency repairs and determination, and dove it straight into the gas giant's atmosphere. The alien observers lost contact with her ship as it disappeared into clouds of ammonia and methane. The pressure readings showed forces that should have compressed her vessel into a tiny metal cube. The temperature fluctuations ranged from freezing to hot enough to melt steel. 40-7 minutes later, Davis emerged from the gas giant with all 63 alien civilians safely aboard her ship. Not bad for a Tuesday, she reported casually. Though next time, maybe let's try a rescue that doesn't involve quite so much turbulence. I think I lost my coffee mug somewhere in that storm. The galaxy was beginning to understand that Earth hadn't just produced tough warriors. It had created a species that treated the impossible as merely inconvenient. The final battle took place in the Andromeda sector, where the Void Swarm had gathered their remaining forces around a massive hive ship the size of a small planet. This was their last stand, and everyone in the galaxy knew it. The combined fleet stretched across space in the largest military formation in galactic history, with human ships scattered throughout the alien formations like deadly wildcards. The Void Swarm's final gambit was their most terrifying yet. They released a psychic wave so powerful it could drive entire populations insane with pure, concentrated fear. The wave hit the alien ships first, and predictably, crew members began collapsing at their stations, overwhelmed by visions of cosmic horror and inevitable death. But then, something happened that would be talked about in galactic history books. For thousands of years, from the human ships came a sound that no one expected. It started small, just a few voices, but quickly grew into something that carried across the vacuum of space through their suit radios. The humans were singing, "Sweet Caroline, good times never seemed so good," came the voice of Private Kelly Roberts as she led her assault team toward the enemy flagship. Her squad joined in immediately, their voices harmonizing as they flew through space, toward certain death. "So good, so good, so good," her teammates sang back, their voices filled with genuine joy despite the fact that they were heading directly into the most dangerous part of the enemy formation. Ambassador Kelleth listened to the human voices with amazement. The Void Swarm's Terra weapon was designed to break the will of any living creature. Yet these humans were responding to it by singing what sounded like a celebration song. Are they actually enjoying this?" whispered Chancellor Vorth, his breathing apparatus struggling to keep up with his shock. More human voices joined in from across the fleet. Soon, hundreds of humans were singing as they charged into battle, their voices creating a chorus that seemed to push back against the swarm's psychic assault. The alien crews, who had been paralyzed by fear moments before, began to recover as the human singing somehow made the terror less overwhelming. "I don't understand," said Dr. Norvex, monitoring the psychic readings. "The fear weapon is still active, but the humans appear to be completely immune. How is this possible, Captain?" Jake Mitchell's voice came over the command channel. Calm and steady, despite the chaos around them. "Fear's just another obstacle, Doc. Back on Earth, we learned a long time ago that sometimes the best way to deal with something scary is to laugh at it." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humans fought with a combination of tactical brilliance and complete disregard for their own safety that left even their allies speechless. They turned every swarm advantage into a weakness, every trap into an opportunity, When the swarm tried to use their biomechanical healing abilities to repair damage, human engineers found ways to turn those same systems against them. When the creatures adapted to human weapons, the humans switched to improvised devices that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. The turning point came when Private Kelly Roberts and her team actually made it inside the hive ship's central core. The alien command staff watched their sensors in disbelief as the humans fought their way through conditions that would have killed most life forms instantly. "Roberts too fleet," came her voice, still somehow cheerful, despite the fact that she was fighting for her life in a toxic hell. "We found their main brain. Ugly little thing, isn't it? Beginning demolition procedures now." 20 minutes later, the massive hive ship began to collapse from within. The Void Swarm, faced with total destruction, did something they had never done in their millions of years of existence. They retreated, not just from the battle, not just from the system, but from the galaxy entirely. They fled into the dark spaces between galaxies, carrying with them the knowledge that they had met something they could not understand, could not adapt to, and could not defeat. With the immediate threat ended, the real changes began. The Galactic Council found themselves dealing with a species that didn't fit into any of their existing categories or classifications. These humans were clearly the most capable warriors the galaxy had ever seen, but they showed no interest in conquest or domination. Instead, they wanted to help. They shared their technology freely, offered medical assistance to worlds damaged by the swarm, and seemed genuinely interested in making friends with everyone they met. The most surreal example of this new reality could be seen daily on Galactic Station Prime's recreation deck. Human children, who had arrived with the refugee families, were playing with alien youngsters in games that left the adult aliens in a constant state of worried amazement. "Tag, you're it," laughed Timmy Chen as he chased a young Praxian through the playground equipment. The alien child was running as fast as his 4 legs could carry him, but Timmy was keeping up easily, despite having only 2 legs and being half the Praxian's size. What truly amazed the watching alien parents was how the human children treated activities that would challenge trained military personnel as simple games. They climbed structures that required significant strength and coordination, played sports that involved physical contact that could injure most species, and did it all with the same casual attitude their parents showed toward galactic warfare. How do we classify a species that treats our greatest physical challenges as childhood entertainment? Chancellor Vorth asked during one of the daily council sessions. Captain Jake Mitchell was watching his 9-year-old daughter Katie teach a group of alien children how to climb the station's emergency access ladders. The alien parents were hovering nearby with medical kits, convinced that someone was going to get seriously injured. Meanwhile, Katie was treating the whole thing like it was the most natural activity in the world. "You know what your problem is," Jake said, with a gentle smile. "You keep trying to classify us. You want to put us in a category, give us a threat level, figure out where we fit in your system." He gestured toward the playground where human and alien children were learning to play together, despite their vast physical differences. "You don't classify us," he continued. "You just try to keep up. We're not here to conquer anybody or take over anything. We're here to help, to make friends, and maybe to show you that the universe doesn't have to be as scary as you thought it was." Ambassador Kelleth looked around the station, seeing humans working alongside aliens in ways that should have been impossible. They were sharing meals that would poison most species, working in environments that would kill others, and somehow making it all look easy. The galaxy had spent thousands of years believing that advanced civilization required moving beyond the primitive struggles of survival. These humans had proved that, sometimes, the best way to become truly advanced was to embrace those struggles and find joy in overcoming them. The Void Swarm was gone, but the humans remained, and for the first time in galactic history, that made everyone feel safer rather than more afraid. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what it needed.